Did you know that reaching your calling has one major main ingredient for you to see it through, and that ingredient is endurance, and that's what we are going to get into today. I'm Rickey Jasper, and this is the Chasing a Greater Vision podcast. After getting laid off 2 times in 6 months, I realized I had to be chasing a greater vision in my life. I had to be walking into my calling. I spent time building up a successful fitness apparel business, and then now stepping back in front of camera to talk, to speak more, to hopefully inspire you to chase a greater vision in your life. And my goal with this podcast is for us to do it together. So let's make it happen. What's going on? Welcome back to the Chasing a Greater Vision podcast. I'm your host, Rickey Jasper. Today, we are talking about your calling. We are talking about endurance and why you need it to step through to make sure that you see your calling through. The first segment is our head and heart hits. This segment is what hit me in the head, made me think logically, and what hit me in the heart made me feel a certain way. So today's head and heart hit quote is, "You're built to handle the pressure that comes with your calling." That's a lot to unpack there. I'm not sure who said it. I actually saw this as a quote, being shared on Instagram. But there's so much to unpack there. From a logic perspective, you're called to do, right? So that means you're called to work. When you're doing something, that's action. And I think that sometimes when we think of our calling, when we think about what God has called us to do, when we think about what God has placed on our heart to do, or the things that we are supposed to walk out in our life, we sometimes think that because we have that skill set, because we were born with it, because we have that within us, that everything is just going to be easy. But when we're called to do something, most often it's an arduous task, and we don't realize that from time to time. And so when the work hits, when we have to impose faith on something, when we don't see where it could go, where it could be, we end up quitting or getting discouraged or questioning our calling or questioning if that's even what we're supposed to do. When in reality, you have to take action. There's going to be some tough times. Where it hit me in the heart is faith-based or not. Proverbs 18:16. There is a verse that really kind of sums up your gifts will make room for you. And I think that's such an interesting thing. And that's something that my dad would always tell me. And it's probably at 32 years old right now, I'm like really finally believing whatever you're gifted to, whatever you're called to, at some point in time, they will make room for you. But there's a caveat. There's the where it hit me in the heart, where it hit me in the feels caveat. You can have this calling, you can have the gifts and talents, but if you don't use them, if you don't do anything to walk through them, they're just going to be stagnant. And over time, you are going to, I won't say lose them, but they're going to atrophy. And your calling, more often than not, is not for you. It's not for you to just benefit from. It's for you to give other people. Your calling is typically in the form of a gift. What do you do with a gift? You give it to others. For me, if I'm bringing it just full vulnerability in me, for me, I know I'm called to speak in some capacity. There's something in me where if I'm not speaking, or if I'm not, trying to share knowledge, if I'm not in a search for knowledge, if I'm not working really hard to try to gain something to tell other people, I don't feel fulfilled. I can have all the money in the world, I can have all the cars, the whatever, but if I'm not doing this, then I'm not doing what I'm called to do. Making sure that I'm consistent with it, investing in production quality, investing in setups, these things, stepping into rooms and doing things that aren't necessarily just the speaking aspect. It's all the auxiliary stuff that cause pressure. It's taking the time away from what I do day to day to make sure that I'm doing it. That's what comes with it. And I'm sure there's going to be a bevy of other things that come with it. But if I'm called to do it, then therefore I have to do it. Now we are stepping into the tips and tricks portion of this podcast. Today's tips, it's going to be 4 ways to have greater endurance for life's challenges and to have greater endurance through your callings. And why I said life's challenges is because when you're called to do something, it's going to be there throughout your life, and you are going to have challenges that are directly in correlation with your calling, and then you're going to have challenges that have nothing to do with your calling, but you are going to have to keep, walking in your calling and walking in your vision. So the first one is find your calling, and this is for people who have no idea what their calling is or haven't taken the time to take a step back, to slow it down, to really listen in on what their calling is. And I know for me, I kind of hit a rock bottom moment. I believe I was probably 22, 23, and I would say rock bottom in a different way, right? In all respect to the different rock bottoms people can have. But I was gainfully employed. Everything was actually going amazing. And I felt so unfulfilled. And it was at an early age, I realized, well, I can have everything that I want. Family's healthy, finances are great, relationships are great, but I still feel unfulfilled. And that was probably a great thing for me because I realized, I was like, but there's something that's missing. And it wasn't a materialistic thing. And I realized, wow, I'm not stepping into what I'm called to do. I immediately started blogging more. I immediately started to get on YouTube more. And I realized like how much I enjoyed my day-to-day, how much I enjoyed my life. But it really took that time where I had to kind of sit down and realize how unfulfilled I actually was. So if you're feeling a little bit lost, a little bit empty, take some time to sit in some silence and think about a few things. And the first thing is, where does your mind go when you are really not doing anything? Where do you daydream about? What are the things that you are thinking about consistently that also kind of scare you? I love speaking, but some of this stuff and what comes with it, it's kind of scary. One, because I don't know what could come with it, right? But I love doing it. Think about those things. Also, have conversations with people who are close to you, who know who you are, and who have been able to observe you in a loving way over time. They're the ones who are typically able to give you a lot of insight as to what they've observed that you do really, really well. I have a few friends who are amazing listeners and they don't even realize it, right? But it's like when you talk to them and the way in which they listen and the way in which they process through things, you immediately feel comfortable. And it's like, wow, they have the gift of really making people feel extremely comforted and welcomed and then empowered after. And I don't know what that can turn into, but it's like you can literally sense what they're called to do in some capacity in some silo of their life. So get that as well. The second thing is expect pressure that comes with your calling. I always think about a calling in seed form. When you have a calling, when you have a vision for your life, when you have a gift, it comes in seed form. It doesn't just come, ready to rock and roll. If I had started this 20 years ago when I was 12, wouldn't be as polished as it is now. And I can guarantee you in 10 years from now, this will be even more polished than it is right now at 32, right? So it's going to come in seed form. And what you do with the seed is you plant it in the ground, which means that you bury it. You put it in darkness. You make sure that it is covered, which is a scary thing. Then it goes through its seasons where it has to be watered and and it has to be broken open. That breaking, that's a tough thing. That's the pressure. And then it has to be open, and then the roots have to grow deep. And this is an interesting thing. When the roots grow deep, and I would say for me, and when it comes to a speaking realm, the past 10, 12 years were the roots growing deep for me for a confidence standpoint to do this, because I dabbled in doing YouTube, I dabbled in doing fitness stuff, and I dabbled in doing writing and content creation, and listening to some people disagreeing with my delivery and having to grow through certain things and all of that. But I realized through all of that, I really love what I'm doing, and this is making me stronger. I'm taking the feedback, I'm getting better, and I will continue to get better. And so people aren't going to see your growth on the surface, because just like I can look outside right now and I can see trees that blossom, I can see flowers that blossom, but over time they weren't like that. They were just in the ground as seeds. So you have to realize that when pressure is coming, when you're walking through your calling, your roots are just growing deeper. You haven't been able to see it blossom yet. And that's okay. That's important. That's what should be happening. So expect that. The third thing is operate in intervals. We see a lot of things on social media now, which is like, for lack of better terms, go balls to the wall, don't sleep, just grind, just blah, blah, blah. And that's hard to keep up and maintain without you stressing out, without you feeling burnt out. Take your life and take your calling and your gifts in intervals. Sometimes it's going to be a grind where you are really pushing, you are really, putting in the work. And then sometimes you're going to go through a season where it's like you have to step back. I just went through that season. I haven't really been putting out content because I was like, I need to step back. I need to reassess how I want to put this content out. I need to reassess the quality. I need to reassess the vision. I need to bring somebody in who has even a greater vision than I even see, who has their vision within their calling of content creation, of storytelling, of everything. And I need them to really pour into me so I can see a greater vision for my vision, right? And those are the intervals. So I didn't just press to just continue to make content for content's sake. I said, hey, I got to slow it down, because when I have a season where I'm really pushing again, I want it to be better. And there's going to be that season again in some other way, shape, or form. Whatever you're going through and whatever your calling is, it's okay to have those seasons. And social media is also a funny thing, because you always feel behind if you always are seeing people within your silo consistently doing the things. But what you don't see is you don't see them going through those seasons as well. And just know that everybody goes through those seasons. Everybody has those things, and it's okay. You go at your own pace. And the last thing is slow it down. Going in intervals, it really leads into this last point of slowing down. Slowing down is so important. Because when you have a calling, you have to think of it as a lifelong thing. It's not just a thing where it's like a flash in the pan where it's like, you got to get it now, and if you don't get it, you'll never have it. No, it's put on your life for a reason. It's there for the taking. But make sure that as you're doing it, as you are intaking your calling and your gifts to give to others, that you are going through it with a process mindset, knowing that it's going to be a process. You can't rush a flower to grow faster. You can't rush a tree to grow faster. So you can't rush these things. A lot of great things, they just take time. So if you have that in a mindset that, okay, I'm where I need to be, I'm going to slow this thing down. I'm going to be particular in the details of how I can really step through my calling. It's going to create greater endurance in you on a consistent basis, because you're going to see your calling and your gifts as a process. You're not going to see it as a race. So that means you're not going to be comparing yourself to other people, because it's not supposed to be compared to other people. You're not going to see your calling as a massive burden. You are also going to see that when life challenges happen outside of your calling, you're going to be able to realize that, hey, sometimes those life challenges, those are going to take precedence. You can focus on those. Your calling will be there. And when you can get back to them, or when you can operate in some capacity with them, even if it's a lower capacity because challenges are hitting, that's okay. So slow things down, but make sure that you are consistently working through your process. So those are the 4 tips, just to kind of recap them. First thing is find your calling. You find that just by slowing down, thinking about the things that make you excited, and auditing your friends and asking them what they think that you do really well. Second thing is expect pressure. Think of your calling in seed form. It's got to grow. It's got to be crushed to be able for the roots to grow deep and the flower to blossom. And it will blossom. It always does. Water it. Do the best thing that you can to cultivate that. Number 3, operate in intervals. Sometimes you're going to be going very fast. Sometimes you got to slow down. Think through things. And the last thing is slow it down. Your calling is going to be a lifelong thing if you consistently progress at it. So those are the 4 things to help you step through your calling with endurance, even when life challenges hit. In the last segment is our word of the day or word of the week, however you want to expand the word. The word is endure. So obviously we've talked about endurance, but endure. And the reason why that's the word is because when you're enduring something, you're doing it when it's not fun. You're doing it when it doesn't feel good. Your calling is going to take time. It's going to go in seasons. You are going to have to show up when you don't even want to show up, but your gifts will always make room for you. Make sure you are going through it with a mindset of endurance. Anything in my life that has been worth something has caused me to endure, and it hasn't been fun. I can give you examples in relationship. I can give you examples in business. I can give you examples in speaking and everything. It's going to cause you to endure. When I first moved to San Diego, I'm in Texas now, but I moved to San Diego 7 years ago from Virginia. I didn't know anybody in San Diego. And when I first moved out there, I didn't have any friends for about the first 2 years. And it was a gift and a curse, because I was missing out on, that social connection. But what I was doing was I started, growing my online personal training business, which transitioned into an apparel business, which transitioned back into running an apparel business and working back in tech, which showed, I met so many people, networked with so many people, and then it really sparked back my love for doing this. in those times, those first 2 years where I really didn't have friends, I was just enduring the seasons of loneliness. But what I was doing was, on Friday nights when people would go out with friends, I didn't have friends, I would sit down and I would make sure I was writing my training programs. I was looking at my future vision. I was, creating YouTube videos. I was editing videos. I was doing the things that I know that could serve my future self and that could serve my calling. And that was such an important thing, because mentally I was like, if I just endure this season, I don't know where it's going to get me to, but I know this is where I'm supposed to be. So endure where you're at. You might be in the best part of your calling, but understand that if you're there, you're meant to go higher. You might be at a part where you don't know your calling. Well, endure the process that it takes to figure that out, and then endure the process that it takes to walk all the way through. So today and this week, we are going to endure what comes at us. We are going to walk in our calling. We are going to walk in it through faith, and we're going to put in the work. And that's just what we always do. So I hope that this message helps you. This is the Chasing Greater Vision podcast. I hope that we can chase our greater vision together by enduring our things that we need to endure to outlive and outlast and walk through our calling together. Thank you all so much for watching the Chasing a Greater Vision podcast. If you like this podcast, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, send it to friends, use a carrier pigeon, do whatever you have to do. We hope that this inspires you to chase your greater vision in your life, and for us to continually and consistently do it together.